wanted to share a few thoughts that I was having this morning about the learning process and any distinction there is to be made between mimicry and artistry. I guess a few of the videos that I put out over the last 4 or 5 weeks exhibiting or demonstrating my exploration of Casey fighting method movements and my development or lack thereof of any skill in that regard has inspired a few of the people that are subscribers to my YouTube channel, such that they're now making their own attempts to explore some of this system. And I think that's great. I mean, the first time I looked at any videos of Casey fighting method last April, I really wasn't able to see, for some reason, what it was. And you know, I just saw lots of elbows and headbutts and stuff, and it looked very brutal and looked very effective, but I really didn't pay close enough attention. And then when I started looking at it maybe a month or so ago, 5 weeks ago maybe again, then I really started to appreciate it, and to appreciate that foundation that they have in the pensador, guard position, and the variations of that pensador, the movement of it, and being able to move while transitioning between the variations of the pensador and striking out of the pensador and using that body movement to generate more power. I mean, I started to really appreciate what an awesome skill set someone might develop exploring the Casey fighting method. And so I began trying to do so myself. And I'm an autodidact, meaning that I'm mostly self-taught in many ways, but saying that, I want to, and this is really the crux to what I want to talk about, I want to add a caveat that when I say I'm self-taught, I don't mean that I'm discovering it myself, or that I am espousing a discourse of strong individualism or this kind of a thing. Everything that I learned through mimicry, I learned through inspiration from external sources, and I learned through bouncing what I'm developing off of real world beings, and seeing what works and what fails, and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And I always have teachers in my life. I don't think there will ever be a time in my life where I don't have people who are, and not just people, but people and animals of other species who are giving their energy toward teaching me. And, you know, usually the relationship is reciprocal in some fashion. But I always have teachers. Even if I'm doing my own learning, even if I'm practicing that autodidacticism, that self-taught approach, where I might not be glued to a particular, organization or curriculum so strongly that I have to adopt everything that they want me to adopt. I will, on the other hand, learn what I think take what I think is appropriate, what it is that I want, And if they have a good curriculum, I'll follow their curriculum. If they don't have a good curriculum, then I'll try to learn what it is that I see that I can learn from them in whatever way that I think I can learn it. But, this is just to say that that even though I'm learning Casey on my own, doesn't mean that there's no mimicry and actual, almost formal instruction going on. And the reason that I bring this up is because one of the guys who was inspired by one of my videos commented how he was learning from that video, that it inspired him to try some things out, but that he didn't want to. He hoped he didn't follow it too closely, because otherwise it would just be mimicry and not artistry. And I don't know that I entirely agree with that. Well, to some extent, I do, and I see the point. Which is why, even when I post these videos, I usually, instead of just calling them KFM or KC examples, I always put, KZ inspired or something like that, because I don't feel that it's appropriate to take that trademark label and apply it to what I'm doing completely, even if I'm following a lot their curriculum, because I am not formally under their school, and so it would be a misrepresentation. But at the same time, am I learning from, if I get my hands on a video that contains KFM curriculum, for instance, because there were these home training videos when the KFM school was still going. I mean, it's split. The two founders have split and started two different organizations, and some of their students have even split and started their own organizations, their own claiming their own arts, their own trademark labels, and these kind of things. But when KFM was still in operation, there was a home curriculum on video. And say I got a copy of one of those videos and I was following it to the letter. Is that artisanship? No, it's not. It is mimicry. But when we say mimicry, it seems to have a negative connotation. And this is part of what I want to get across, is that really in the learning process, there must be mimicry. There's always mimicry. If you watch a human child is born into this world with certain inherent abilities, maybe certain inherent skills. Like a human child is going to walk, is going to be able to run. No doubt. Nobody's going to be able to stop that human child from running and walking. If it's just allowed to, receive proper nutrition and stuff, it's going to start doing that. It's going to stand up on two legs and start walking. So we have some inherent abilities, but a great deal of the, what we appreciate about ourselves comes through learning. And learning is a social phenomenon. It's not an individual phenomenon. we don't learn anything in a vacuum. Even when we think that we've come up with something, even you take any artist and you take their greatest artistic achievement, this was not developed, in a vacuum, without exposure and inspiration and mimicry of things that others were doing. Could be other humans, could be animals, could be sounds, could be anything. But there's always going to be something inspiring the artist. And even an artist that, say, sits down and just plays with color on a canvas and sees what emerges from that play with color, that artist still has a history of experience that is going to inform what he or she perceives to be coming out of that color, and is gonna even no doubt have an influence on the colors that are used. And then whatever comes out of that color that they're gonna start pulling out a little bit more into relief is gonna be something that's very informed by their experience. So it's not that it came from nowhere. And this mainstream discourse about learning being a discovery, and therefore, in that sense, very individualistic, is, in my opinion, it's a pedagogic lie. This is not how we learn. We're fooling ourselves if we continue to value individualism and discovery. Not only that, I just think it's unethical, because then we're not having any respect for the ones that we're learning from. When I look around the world at all of what we're doing, all of our technologies and this, I see that a lot of them are inspired by nature. There's a reason that vehicles have 4 wheels, and that airplanes have the kind of wings and bodies that they do. We are inspired and really, in that sense, taught by nature, and yet, because we so celebrate the individual discoverer of the knowledge, we fail to give adequate respect to the nature that's teaching us. We don't give back in this kind of learning relationship. It's a one-way street. It's non-reciprocal. And that's not a good relationship. It's a kind of a mining. So I think it's better to just be forthright and not only concede but celebrate that we learn through mimicry, and that we learn through balancing our unique development of that mimicry off of reality, and finding where we are mistaken and where we need to change things to make them work better for us, and ultimately, in a lifelong learning process, really trying to become the best us that we can be, and just enjoying the ride, But I think there's something ugly in worrying about whether or not somebody is mimicking or whether or not they are an artist. Because I do agree, to claim artistry, you got to be creating. But even in, like I said, even when you're creating, even in the most kind of like seemingly individualistic way, you've still got a whole host of influences playing upon you. And so when I hear the discourse that celebrates the individual discoverer and the the unique creative artist on his own kind of a thing, I find that there's something ugly in that and very egotistical in it. And I don't think it's the kind of discourse that we really want to have if we want to develop as and become more socially mature. People, able to live well with one another and with the other animals of this earth. So those are just some thoughts that I wanted to share. I'm not saying that somebody that sits down and paints the same painting as someone else is an artist, but they might be working on developing their artistic skills, and there's nothing wrong with that. Their artistic skill, I mean, the skills that they would have to use to engage in more artistic practices instead of copying someone else. But copying someone else is definitely 100% an important part of the learning process, and everybody does it. Anybody that says they don't do it is lying. So that's my perspective.